This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com. The
universe of love and treats, turkey, stuffing, whatever they did in Australia. Although their Thanksgiving's probably different. Do they even have one? I'll ask my co-host in a moment. Welcome to this month's episode of Through the Looking Glass. I co-host Scott Criscuolo. Thanks for joining us. It is an honor for you to be with us. And we are in November. And you know what that means. That means that we're talking about World War III. So what? No, we're not. Although was that November's show at WCW? I think it was, right?
Was.
1 month there was Lethal Lottery, and then it bounced around. But anyway, let me bring in my my co-host. He is the Thunder from Down Under. He's my gobbledygooker. Hello, Dave Hall. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hello to all our listeners worldwide. Thank you for joining us once again. It's warming up. It's getting warmer down here by the day. It's we're in November now, and I'll tell you what. Yeah, it's not Thanksgiving's not a thing down here in Australia. We don't have Thanksgiving. I guess we're just thankful all the time. You know, we live a life of thankfulness down here. So, we're more, but I know it's a special day up in. It's something I've never really, I guess, down here in Australia, I know it's a special day in the US, and I know Canada have their own Thanksgiving apparently, and I don't fully get it, but I know it's important to everyone, and so I wish everyone in the US a happy Thanksgiving build-up. It's approaching quick, but no, we're doing fine down here. Lovely weather as always, and it's getting warmer and warmer.
You know what? It's getting a little. It's not totally murder here yet. It's probably today it was in the upper 50s, low 60s. So it's still a little warm. It's not dipping down too bad yet. But I mean, God, October it was still in the low 70s. So we're still kind of hanging out with you. I'm looking forward to our Royal Rumble, the sequel episode in January, where you have it at 99 and I'm at 9. So that's the pinnacle. And then we get to June, and you're at 9 and I'm at 99. Although you don't even get that cold, so
no, it doesn't get that cold down here.
No, you're lucky. Once again, thank you for joining us on this November episode. This is episode 14. I say this every month, but I'm going to keep saying it. Like the rest of our monthly shows. If you are new and this is the first podcast you've clicked on here in the PTB Wrestling Network, welcome. I'm Scott. Have a seat. We have the best podcast content around for wrestling. We're mostly classic stuff. We do some new stuff occasionally, like Place to Be Nation's main event. But we do a lot of classic stuff, and like this show. This is not an episodic show, meaning you don't have to shut this episode off and go back to episode 1. All of our episodes are standalones. They just have one theme that we go into an alternate universe and tweak things that maybe we want that didn't happen in real life. But please, after you conclude this episode, go to the archive at placetobe.podbean.com and listen. And please listen to the previous 13 episodes. They were all pretty awesome. I particularly enjoyed our War Games episode last month. I had a ton of fun with that episode.
It was really good.
And for the second consecutive month, Dave Hall, we are going to be doing another team-oriented episode. For those that are veterans of the show, you will know that we have already done a Royal Rumble episode. We did that back in January, of course. We did a WrestleMania episode back in March. And we did a SummerSlam episode in August. So, what are we talking about tonight, Dave Hall? I think we've kind of tipped our hand, but set the table. Well, first off, sir, you mentioned all the great weather, and Thanksgiving is a big deal here in America, and in Canada, I think Thanksgiving's in December or something. But I know you eat. I'm assuming you eat turkey, Dave. Is turkey a thing in Australia?
It's not really a big thing down here. We love our chickens, our roast chickens, and lamb and chicken are big down here in Australia. Turkey's not really a big thing, but if you really want to go out on a limb and be courageous and daring, you can go and buy kangaroo. Now, I've never had kangaroo myself, but apparently it can be quite tough. But yeah, there are people out there who'll give kangaroo a go. I guess a bit of the national treasure, the kangaroo, and the sort of that around the world, that symbol of Australia. But I don't know that turkeys are a symbol of America. I guess it's it's just different. But yeah, no, turkey's not a thing down here.
Oh, okay. I love lamb, by the way. And I love chicken, but I am actually a giant turkey fan. I love turkey. I don't like cold cut turkey. I think cold cut turkey's gross, but I love real turkey. So when I think of a good turkey sandwich, I think of real turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and mayo. That's my gobbler. That's what I eat up. So I look forward to November because I love football and I love turkey. In November here in North America, it's all about turkey and football. Christmas is Christmas and basketball because the NBA does all their games that day. Anyway, I digress.
Well, that is at least the one thing. The one thing down here is when it's Thanksgiving, because we get the 3 Thanksgiving games of NFL back to back on our Australian TV channels. So we actually get to see those 3 games. So
yeah, there you go.
So I'm looking forward to that. That's the one day my wife gets annoyed at me a bit more because it's like you watch football on Monday nights and you watch football on, why do you have to watch all these games on in the middle of the week? I'm like, well, they're on.
Exactly. And if you're listening to this the day it drops, which is November 16th, we're, I think, a week and a half away from Thanksgiving. So if you care, let's take a look at the games that day. The games that day, actually, Dave, all very good games. The early game is Bills-Lions. All right, so maybe it's not a good game. The Bills may blow them out. Bills play Lions. The Giants play the Cowboys.
That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting.
Be a fun game. Yes, Cowboys, of course, beat the Giants on Monday night earlier in the year. And the primetime game is the Patriots and the Vikings. That should be fun.
Yeah, that could be very interesting. There's a couple of interesting games after you get over the blowout that'll happen in the first one.
Yeah. I mean, poor Detroit, poor Jordan Duncan. I think he forgets football exists. Anyway, but it is November, so of course, Dave, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, of course, we're going to be rebooking a bunch of Thanksgiving football games, and seeing if we can find a way to coach teams to wins.
Yes, in my looking glass, the Cowboys are 47-0 in the history of Thanksgiving.
But in all seriousness, everyone, I mean, as I said, while Thanksgiving may not be a big thing down here in Australia, it's very clear that Thanksgiving and November, there is a very key event that goes hand in hand with that, and that's the Survivor Series. We've alluded to it already that we've looked at the big 3 to date, and we're going to add the big 4 today. And we're going to have a little bit of a look at some different realities with the Survivor Series, and we're going to have some fun with this today. We're going to look at a couple of different years and make some changes. Essentially, we're going to do a bit of a rebook today. So that's going to be fun. That's going to be, and I hope everyone enjoys that. But before we let the cat out of the bag about how we're going to do that, got, as always, Survivor Series. This is one that I think probably a lot of long-term fans have been on from the beginning. I'm assuming you, like me, saw it pretty well from the beginning. 87 was the first one, and at that time it was teams of 5 strive to survive. So what are your thoughts when you think of the Survivor Series? What is it about the Survivor Series that has appealed to you over time?
Well, the funny thing about Survivor Series is that was the one pay-per-view as a kid that I never watched live. Obviously, until 1990. Was it 1991? Was it 19? No, it was not. I think it was 1991. The first 4 Survivor Series, 87 through 90, were all on Thanksgiving. because I remember, I was at my aunt and uncle's house on Thanksgiving Day. We'd go over there after we'd have one half of my mom's half of the family would come over, and we'd have dinner, turkey dinner at my house, and then we'd go to my dad's side of the family in the evening, in the afternoon, like for an open house, and I'd end up eating more turkey and watching the Cowboys with my cousin, who's a big Cowboy fan. Everybody else is a Giant fan, so we laughed. But except in the late 80s when the Cowboys weren't good. But I never, honestly, Dave, got to watch Survivor Series for like a month and a half until the VHS tape came out for me to rent.
Which is around the time I would have to wait. So
right.
Yeah.
So this is one time where you and I are even in the viewing department. As a matter of fact, I was very jealous of my brother, my next oldest brother, because he went to the 1990 Survivor Series because it was right up the street at the Hartford Civic Center in Hartford, Connecticut, a mere 40 minutes from my house.
He got to see the Gobbledygooker live.
He did. That was the biggest moment of that show. Right? I don't remember anything. What else happened? I don't remember anything else on that show, right? Let me think. Hogan or Tito.
Undertaker's debut.
Oh, that guy. That's right. I thought Gobbledygooker was the most important thing. I forgot about what's his face, Texas Red. Mean Mark Hallis debuted. No, of course that was one of the most iconic moments that still live to this day in the history of the business. Yes, he got to see that live, and I was pissed. Then the next year, of course, starting in 91, it went to the night before, and I still didn't watch it, but I still couldn't watch it. I was doing other things, and I was in high school, and I was in college. So the first Survivor Series that I watched live was 1996 at the one at Madison Square Garden that has arguably one of my favorite matches of all time, and that was the first match between Steve Austin and Bret Hart. I love that match. I almost love that match more than the WrestleMania 13 match because I always thought that match was just a great wrestling match. Obviously, the match at WrestleMania 13 took on a whole different candor, but the match between them at the Garden was awesome. I did watch live also the night before, Dave, was ECW November to Remember. So I actually watched pay-per-views back in the, back when we didn't have the network or anything. I actually watched 2 pay-per-views back-to-back nights. So that was fun. And then, of course, I did watch Montreal live, which was bizarre. And then I've watched all the Survivor Series since. But early in my life, Dave, because Survivor Series fell on a holiday, my mom's like, "You watch your wrestling? What's the matter with you? Shut up and watch the Cowboys." I did not. My mom was not allowing me to buy pay-per-view on Thanksgiving night. So this is one case, Dave, and obviously I'd love to hear your stories. I probably watched the first 6 or 7 Survivor Series the same time you probably did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I've shared before, we were reliant on the VHSs. While I've talked about how WrestleMania was often shown on television, Survivor Series was never on TV down here. So we had to wait for the VHS. And I remember the 87 and 88 ones. I remember them quite clearly. Also remember them being heavily edited, which was very frustrating. This 2-hour. You could see that there were edited elements of the matches, and that always frustrated me. So, but it was one that I got to that point where I just wait. I knew it would be coming out. I knew it was due. I'd be hitting the video store, maybe not day after day, but certainly every few days. Is it out yet? Is it out yet? And the minute it was out, I would grab it and go home and watch it. So, often, having around that time, I was also getting the WWF magazines and the Apta mags, and so I'd have a very good idea of what was being built and where things were going for those events. So I didn't miss out on too much, but it really was just waiting for the VHSs to come out, which can be frustrating at times. As I've shared, down here in Australia, it could take up to 3 months sometimes for them to be released, and that just but then everything was 3 months, so you're still getting the consistent pattern between events. So It was
Right.
it was good. So always love getting. So the Survivor Series normally came out sort of. We'd probably get it out around Easter or probably sometime early, maybe late January, early February. So it was a good way to sort of kick in the new year.
Right. Yep. I definitely remember not getting tapes until like definitely after Christmas. WWF took forever back in the day to get. As a matter of fact, if you want let's get an exact, because I'm OCD about this kind of stuff. Let me go to, because I think the dates are on the historyofwwe.com, which of course is the exceptional site run by my two very good friends, Richard Land and of course Graham Coffin. I'm going to go to, let's see, video results. Did it come out here? Because I think the date would, let's see. Yeah, it doesn't. No, I thought it would have the date, but it didn't. Let's put it this way. I don't know what the date was, but in their chronological order, the Best of the WWF Volume 14 came out on December 15th, 1987. And Saturday Night's Main Event, The Greatest Hits, came out on April 13th, 1988. So, yeah, let's assume that the tape came out sometime after New Year's. That's what I'm going to assume, like maybe the second week of January. Let me look ahead to 88. Best of the... curious. Let's see. Maybe the Survivor Series 88 tape has a date. Nope. Oh, yes, it did. Oh, wow. The 88 Survivor Series tape came out on December 14th. So only, barely a month, like 3 weeks later, the tape came out. I guess a year later, Coliseum Video was much faster with the turnaround. So yeah, it probably ranged somewhere between like the week after Christmas to probably the third week of January. At some point in that window, the Survivor Series tape would come out. So, but yeah, I did not watch any of the Survivor Series live that took place between 87 and 95. I started watching when they went to Sundays. So, but what does that mean for tonight? Very interesting. Enlighten us, Dave. What are we going to do this evening?
Well, when you look at Survivor Series, the concept of Survivor Series right from the beginning was teams of whether it be 4 or 5 striving to survive, and it's the staple of the event throughout the years. Now, obviously, very much sort of 2000 on. You don't get a full event of Survivor matches like you did in 87 and 88. You get normally 2. Since we've gone co-branded, you normally get a Survivor match for each brand. You normally get 2, maybe 3 Survivor matches scattered with it, maybe a title match here or a major feud match in the middle. But yeah, it's still very commonplace. But there were a couple of years where basically the Survivor concept wasn't utilized. And what we're going to do to start with is we're going to look at 2 years in particular where the WWF moved away from the Survivor concept and put on more of a normal card. And we're gonna look at maybe what those cards could have been if they did do a Survivor concept. So that's going to be the first half of the show. And in the second half of the show, we're going to maybe take it back a little bit earlier and consider what if the WWF launched Survivor Series earlier than 1987? What if it was like the first ever pay-per-view event that they created? We'll get to that. We'll get to that soon. But we're going to have a bit of fun. We're going to do a little bit of rebooking to start with today. So we're going to jump through the hole, and we're going to go the very first time that the WWF moved away from the matches of survival was 1992. And a great year. It was the year of Ric Flair. It was
Correct.
the year of the rise of the Hitman. It was the year of the arrival of Razor Ramon, and it was the year that they didn't run the traditional Survivor Series match for the first time. Now, I got to ask you, Scott, when that happened at the time, and as I said, we live in and now the era is it's more accept. Yeah, you get it. Yeah, we have a couple of Survivor matches, we get a couple of other matches, and that feels right. But at the time in 1992, did it feel strange? Was it weird to you that they moved away from what had been that format?
Here's the thing. I felt like, and that's why it was very hard for me to try to put together. So I'm curious. I have some matches that are kind of mangled a bit, so I'm looking forward to what you have. 1992, at the back end, the roster, and I remember JR and I talking about this on the Place B podcast when we did the 85 to 92 journey. We were doing 1992. We were coming to the end. The roster was not that deep. A lot of guys were leaving. A lot of guys, either Vince just didn't want anymore. They had outlived their usefulness to him, so they moved on probably to WCW or whatever, the Indies, or they retired or whatever. So it was very transitional in 1992. So I feel like the reason they did, I mean, they do have the one tag match, but I just don't think the roster was very deep. Remember, you had pretty much three debuts, big debuts on this show. Actually, now that I think about it, you have one big debut in this match on this show, and that was, of course, the debut of Yokozuna. Tatanka was becoming a big player. You had Owen Hart's kind of, moving forward. And then you had the big feud with Flair and Razor and Savage. And so there were a lot of, I think the way the creative was, Dave, those last 4 months of 1992, I don't think the roster was deep enough to have Survivor matches. That's kind of why I don't think they did it. I think they did the tag one with the Disasters and Money Inc. But I think there were too many individual feuds going on that needed to be blown off or moved on or whatever at this show, that I just don't think the roster was deep enough to put Survivor matches on in 1992. The other years, the roster was very deep, and you could do the tag, and you could do a couple of mid-card ones, and then the main event one. I don't think you had that many guys viable enough to sell tickets or sell pay-per-view buys. I think Vince realized, listen, the year before, I had a bunch of Survivor matches, but I also had Hogan Taker for the world title, which drew a lot. But now, of course, the back end of 1992, things are different. The roids are going on, and, Hogan's gone. And I don't know if I have enough the roster to do that. So I'm going to try another title main event. And I think I've always said that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels put on a banger in this main event. I think it's one of the more unheralded title matches. So was I surprised? A little bit, but at the same time, in retrospect, I feel like the roster, and again, JR and I were, when we did this on the Place B podcast, we were talking about both 1991 and 1992. We felt like the roster just wasn't deep enough to have 4 Survivor matches and 20 guys. I mean, yeah, there's guys here, but did any of them could you put any of them together to make a team? I don't think you could. I mean, if you try to do Survivor matches, I think you'd have 2 matches. I think that'd be it. So that's what I think the problem was. I just don't think the roster was big enough.
Yeah. I think in retrospect, I'd have to agree with you. I remember at the time I was very surprised, and I was like, well, this isn't what the Survivor Series is about. And the card became very reliant on the storylines going into it and Brett and Shawn carrying the in-ring action. So what they produced ended up being, I actually quite enjoyed. I think it's quite an enjoyable card to go back. It's a very easy watch. It's not a difficult event to watch. It might not be the greatest, in ring, from beginning of the card to end of the card. It might not be the greatest event in history, but it's a very easy watch. And I don't mind going back every now and then and throwing it on and just having it on in the background and enjoying some of the key storyline elements to it. But at the time, I was very much, this isn't what the Survivor Series is about, and I was very grateful that the following year they got back to the format. So you've got this one anomaly year in the middle, but I agree with you. I think a lot of it had to do with the change in the roster. And I think part of it was you had so many sudden departures. You had, LOD suddenly disappeared. You had Berserker suddenly gone. Bulldog suddenly gone. The issues with the Warriors. So all of these guys just suddenly, for various reasons, the steroid issues, Hawk just having had enough, probably didn't want to get drug tested anymore. And I think it created a very sudden drop in depth numbers that, like you said, impacted the roster quite significantly. But we're going to give it a go. Now, I gather you've headed down the teams of 5. I must admit, I scaled it back. I couldn't get teams of 5, but I did manage to get teams of 4.
Okay.
So would be interesting to just compare what we've come up with here and see what would have been some options available to Vince in 1992. And that's really what we're looking at today. We're just having a bit of fun. What could have been if they went down that path. So so let's jump through. Let's go through the whole, and because I think some of our conversations will pick up as we talk about some of the matchups. And I'm gonna throw it out there. You said it. The Brett Shawn title match was a big deal and really carried the card and is an unheralded match. And I agree with that. And it's one thing that I felt needed to stay on the card. I liked that in 91 they did that Hogan Taker match, and this became the element moving forward. The world title, more often than not, was still being defended. Didn't happen in 93, but we sort of got it in other years. And so I've kept the Brett Shawn title match on the card and for everyone to enjoy.
I didn't. I kicked it old school and did strictly Survivor. I feel bad. I only got 3 matches. So this is going to be maybe a shall we say a discount pay-per-view for 1992. Because I wanted to try my best to not add any singles matches. But I don't fault you for keeping Sean Brett, because as I just said, that match is a banger. It's one of my favorite matches by either guy. I don't know if I had it on my top 100. I'll look at that later. But all right. So I kept the tag as is. Disasters and Nasties against Money Inc. and Beverly Brothers. Why change that? It's already ready made. I have a mid-card one. So here's the team. The baby faces are Virgil, Tatanka. I kind of mishmashed the singles matches together, but tell me if this makes sense to you. I did Virgil, Tatanka, Big Boss Man, and High Energy. So 5 against the Head Shrinkers, Nails, their captain, Rick Martel, and I put Yokozuna on the heel team. And I kind of treat Yokozuna like you did with Taker 2 years earlier. He squashes Coco, he squashes Owen, and maybe he goes out. What happens is he goes outside and does something to somebody on the outside, maybe Tatanka or something, and gets like counted out or DQ'd.
Yep.
And it comes down to Bossman and Nails brawl outside, and they both get eliminated. You let this match go for a while because you got a lot of good guys here. And I think it comes down to Virgil, Tatanka, and Martel. And I think the head shrinkers get eliminated at some point. And I think it's Tatanka, Virgil, and Martel. You make this the opener. And I think Tatanka pins Martel, and your survivors are Tatanka and Virgil. Because it sounds like, obviously, as we moved ahead into 1993, that the company had things for Tatanka. Obviously, by WrestleMania 9, he's getting an IC title shot. So I think you need Tatanka to look strong here going into 1993. So that's what I have. So I have Tatanka and Virgil. You can throw Virgil a bone. Kind of like 1990 when they threw Tito a bone. Throw Virgil a bone, let him be a survivor. Whatever. Maybe have Yoko. Maybe if you have Yoko come back and squash Virgil post-match to really put him over and generate some serious heel heat. And then maybe him and Tatanka go face to face, but Fuji calls him off and, walks him out or whatever. So that's my mid-card match. My main event match. Oh, well, what are your thoughts on that? I want your thoughts on that first. Then I'll do my main event match.
Yeah, look, I'll give one of my matches up because I essentially have a very similar match because one of my mid-card matches, I've got the team of the Big Boss Man, Virgil, and High Energy against Nails, the Head Shrinkers, and Yokozuna. So I've gone a very similar route to you. I think, what you've done, I actually can see it working with having Tatanka in the match with those guys, and knowing where they're taking his push and his direction. I see the need for him to come out victorious, which means you need to get Yokozuna out, probably like you said, a count out or something similar to what happened with Taker in 90. By having a team of 4 and not having Tatanka and Martel in my version, I see it more as sort of match where perhaps Bossman and High Energy and Virgil, they get a very early lead. Bossman gets rid of Nails and gets rid of him quite early just to polish that off, end that feud. They get that clean and done. Maybe the Head Shrinkers knock Virgil or Coco out, and then the Bossman and Owen and Virgil, maybe we'll get Coco out, and then we get rid of both Head Shrinkers. So it's Yokozuna against 3, and then Yokozuna just comes, and he hasn't been in the ring yet, and he comes in the ring and he just plows the field, takes all 3 of them out in brutal fashion, just one after the other, to emerge as the sole survivor of that match.
So in our universe here, Dave, in his rookie match, you put him over as the survivor. I am very impressed with that. Wow. Very impressed. You're taking a risk. I like that.
But I get that because I don't have Tatanka in my version, I've got that luxury of being able to sacrifice a couple of guys where I with what you've got, I think, with that 5 and having Tatanka and Martel in there, you would need to get Yokozuna out another way. And I like that. And I like that finish. Having Tatanka as one of the survivors, I think would be vital.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like your match. My TV went on by accident. Sorry. I love that you have Tatanka's Yokozuna as the sole survivor. I think that's great. I'm very, very impressed with that. I feel like my focus kind of like I kind of treated Yoko like we did with Taker 2 years earlier. I think I don't want to put him over quite yet. I want to let him do some stuff on TV getting into 93. And then I still have him winning the Rumble in this universe. So I'm not in a rush to put Yoko over that strong. You doing it, however, is completely acceptable for me. I'm pumped. I like you taking that risk. That's really cool. But since I have a main event situation later in the show anyway, Tatanka's a guy that I think they want to put over strong. Getting into 93 if you're going to make him one of your big mid-card guys. So, okay. Here's my main event match. Now, you have captained by the Macho Man, Randy Savage. You have, okay, Savage. Now, in this world, we still have the Ultimate Warrior. So I'm putting him in the match and not Mr. Perfect. So Savage, Warrior, Brett, Taker, and Crush. I mean, not Crush. I'm sorry. Yeah, Crush. I forgot Crush was a babyface. I was looking a year ahead. My bad. And the heel team will be Flair, Perfect, still a heel. So I have Perfect on the heel side. Razor, Ramon, Sean, and I throw Repo Man in there as an extra. I don't have Kamala. So the interesting thing here is a stipulation is added to the match. You know me with my stips. If anybody pins Bret Hart, that guy gets a title shot at the Royal Rumble.
You love putting the champion in jeopardy, don't you?
I do. I'm such a heel booker, aren't I? I'm so great. So if Bret Hart gets pinned, he doesn't lose his title, but he finds out who his opponent will be in January at Arco Arena in Sacramento for the Royal Rumble. I think you have I think you load this match up. And because Brett gets attacked by Shawn Michaels, because Brett pins him, Shawn hits him with a chair after the match. And while there's brawling going on, Razor Ramon gets the pin and eliminates Bret Hart. So we do get Bret and Razor at the 93 Rumble. But we do it that way instead of Razor just getting the match randomly. Savage chases Flair out of the ring because, we got to protect them.
Yep.
And The Undertaker I'm looking at this now. This is interesting because I still have Warrior. I think Perfect gets pissed off that everybody left him. And it's Perfect, Savage. Perfect is alone against Savage, Undertaker, and Warrior. And in the end, he eats all their finishers. And Savage pins him with the elbow drop. And you end the show with Savage, Yoko, and Taker as the baby faces. Now, I know that sounds shitty for Brett, but I feel like we need some type of heel turn. And I think that's where Perfect would end up turning babyface to kind of help out the mood of the room at the end of the match. I think, and I hate to do that to Brett, but I think you need to set up, because Brett's going to win the Rumble match anyway. I think Shawn, perhaps, I just added this. Perhaps, instead of Marty Jannetty, because, I always felt that feud was shit. Even though, I know he threw through the plate glass window, but they waited so long for that feud. I feel like it had no juice left by the end of the year. How about Brett costs Shawn the IC title at the Royal Rumble, and Tatanka becomes Intercontinental Champion? So Brett Sean gets his comeuppance on Brett. Sean gets his comeuppance thanks to Brett for Brett losing the match at Survivor Series. So I know it got very convoluted, but I'm trying to kind of juice up the fact that this roster, Dave, is so top heavy.
Yeah.
That it's very difficult to try to not make anybody feel like a mid-carder. But unfortunately, our world champion still kind of has that mid-cardish feeling, and Brett still hasn't quite elevated yet because you have guys like, oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm allergic to baby faces winning. Excuse me. I think that it helps kind of re-elevate Brett back and fight him and get him fighting into 93. I think you elevate Tatanka immediately, and Savage, who obviously is kind of on the back end of his WWF run, not obviously dealing with what happens when he makes WCW. So I'll be honest, Dave, it was not easy. It was not easy to put Survivor Series matches together for this year because the roster was very thin. So that's my main event match. I'm sure everybody hates it, but I was trying to let kind of the Legends guys like Savage and even Warrior kind of get a little shine in the main event. And Brett will get his comeuppance on Sean at the Royal Rumble when he helps Tatanka win the Intercontinental title. So that's what I got. I know it's very convoluted, but again, I tried to make all the main event guys look as good as possible.
and I think with who you've got in that match, it really does. It makes that sort of situation of well, how do you, there are guys that are going to be protected by Vince, you know, a Savage, a Warrior, a Taker. They're going to be protected, and
right.
You just can't afford to have everyone. You can't afford to have 5 guys all survive the match when the opposition are who they are, your Flairs and your Razors and your Perfects. So someone's going to have to be sacrificed at somewhere, and that's probably why I pulled Brett out of my main event. I originally had Brett in a main event, like in a team of 5 situation, and as I was struggling to get teams together, I pulled him and Sean out and put them back into that title match because I wanted to protect Brett from that situation. But I think what you've said would work, because even without the title shot on the line, the fact that someone pins Brett in the match opens the door for, I beat you, I pinned you, I should have the title shot. So right. Even without having the stipulation, you could utilize Brett losing in the match to push for a title match. Very, very much what they did in Canadian Stampede when Owen pinned Austin. Austin wanted to get his revenge on Owen. The mood shifted because Owen played up how he pinned Austin and how he beat Austin in that match, and that took Austin's attention off Bret Hart and put it on to Owen. And you could see that happening here. Bret going, well, I'm not going to live with this. You pinned me, yeah, but title wasn't on the line. Let's go for it. You're on. So yeah. So I think it will work, and that's the 5-man scenario. I've gone down, as I said, I've gone down the different path. I've used teams of 4, so I've got another 2 mid-card matches before my main event.
Oh wow! I can't wait.
My main event.
I can't wait for these.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the dregs match first. So I went through the roster. No, I'll give you the more important match, and then I'll tell you what I've come up with. So as I said, I've got teams of 4, so I'm going to leave my main event match for last, and we'll see. But I've pulled together. I haven't used the tag match that existed. I've split that up, and I've reallocated the combatants, and so the other significant mid card match I have is team captained by Undertaker, and his partners are Tatanka and the Natural Disasters, against the team captained by Rick Martel, and his teammates are Kamala and the Beverly Brothers. So this match is going to be a slaughter. Taker is going to put Kamala out of commission. I think that the disasters in the Beverleys, maybe the Beverleys double team Typhoon and get a bit of a get sort of a bit of a pin on him. Perhaps Martel uses something foreign, salt, maybe some powder in the eyes of Earthquake, or maybe behind the referee's back nails Earthquake with a chair to allow Earthquake to be eliminated from the match. But the end of the match is going to be The Undertaker and Tatanka standing tall. Tatanka's going to get the pin on Martel. The Beverleys can be eliminated. How anyone can take them out. But we end up with The Undertaker and Tatanka standing tall as the survivors of that match. Again, that concept. Tatanka is on the upward trajectory, and Undertaker is Undertaker. He's vanquished Kamala, beaten him, and everyone's cheering for these two guys.
That's huge, Dave. You're giving Tatanka a big rub by having him stand tall with the dead man. So I like the fact that you and I are giving the Tatanka some love tonight, because that's big. That's big that you have him standing tall next to the dead man. I'm very impressed. Very impressed.
Yeah. So I think we've both agreed that, where his career was in the WWF at that point, right? They would find a way to have him standing tall, and that was very important to his trajectory. All right, these guys are on the roster, and I managed to pull another two four-man teams together. But this is the dregs of society, if there was ever any. This team is captained by Crush, and his teammates are the returning Marty Jannetty, the recently returned Bob Backlund, and the man in the suit, Max Moon.
Wow. Wow.
And their opponents, captained by Bam Bam Bigelow, you have Papa Shango, the Repo Man, and Damien Demento. They were all on the roster. I double checked it. They were appearing on TV before Survivor Series occurred. So this is not bringing guys in early. But my goodness, I mean, you talk about a hodgepodge of absolute garbage. I mean, Papa Shango, Repo Man, and Damien Demento is just, that's the epitome of bad. I think the way this match would probably go down, you find ways to get Papa Shango out and Repo and Demento and Max Moon. They're all completely expendable. Even Bob Backlund, he can probably get a couple of pins, but he's going to go. I think where you're going to end up going with this match is probably, I think it's sort of I sort of struggle with this, but because I've got Brett and Sean as a title match and where I want to go in the main event, I think the winner of this match needs to be Bam Bam Bigelow, and maybe this event sees the initial arrival of Doink distracting Crush while he's out of the ring, maybe confusing Crush, and Crush gets himself counted out, and Bigelow scores a pin over Jannetty to become the sole survivor of the match.
Well, I will say, you made my PIC Mr. Rossero's day, because that's a him match if there ever was one. I think you have like every one of his favorite guys of 1992 in that match. Is it your main event? Does it end the show?
No.
It'd be a Coliseum video
toilet break match.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you would call the original Coliseum video exclusive. I listen, Dave. You got to start somewhere. This is a good. This is a solid curtain jerker. This is how you get the crowd pumped up. I guess you could open with either this one or your tag. I enjoyed that. You need a fun match, and you want to get those guys. And I like the idea of making Bigelow the survivor because he's going to end up having a fairly solid 1993. He's going to kind of feud with Brett. The two of them have the amazing, one of my favorite matches at the 93 King of the Ring. So having him in the match and having him survive, I don't think is dumb at all. So in that aspect, I think you were right there. I'm so glad that you really needed to give Damien Demento a pay-per-view payday, but that was very impressive. But yeah, you're good, Dave. That's why I like having you around. We can get over guys like Damien Demento. Listen, I applaud you because I couldn't do it. I trying to scrape was like, oh God, I don't know if I could do this. But you did a pretty good one there. I like that match. I like all the low mid card curtain jerker guys in it. I had no problem with it at all, and I love the fact that you had Bigelow as the survivor, because I think that's big. In all seriousness, that's big for him because he does end up having a pretty solid 1993 leading up to facing Brett later on in the year, and I mean it's a big deal. So I'm impressed. I know that's kind of like the oh man, I got to go eat some more turkey match, but I got to say you found a way. So I can't argue with you on that. You found a way. So all right.
Main event
yes.
time. And if you know the roster, you know what's coming. But the two teams. So team number one is captained by the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and his teammates are Razor Ramon and the WWF Tag Team Champions Money Incorporated, and their opponents, the team captained by the Macho Man Randy Savage. The recently turned babyface Nasty Boys are on that team, and just as happened in real life, the original partner would have been the Ultimate Warrior, and I think you could run the entire pre-match the week before the whole primetime wrestling storyline of Warrior gone and Perfect stepping in to take over as Savage's partner, and so Perfect steps in. I think you can play a lot of what actually happened in real life into this match, because you create a scenario with Savage, Perfect, and the Nasty Boys. You create a scenario of, can Savage trust any of his teammates? Because a couple of months earlier, he and Warrior were wrestling the Nasty Boys. Can he trust Perfect? And then you've got that inbuilt storyline of taking over from Warrior. So I thought that's a good way to get that together. And I probably see this, the Nasties and Money Inc. basically take each other out. Maybe one of the Nasty Boys gets a pin on IRS. Maybe Money Inc. DiBiase takes out, both Nasty Boys. Perfect or Savage easily disposes of DiBiase, and then really you come down to that basic tag of Savage, Perfect, Flair, Ramon, and you can literally run it from there into the ending of what actually happened. The actual Survivor Series 92. Perfect, nearly leaves. He's getting annoyed as Savage is getting beaten down. Flair and Ramon continue to beat them down. Perfect returns. All hell breaks loose. Crowd go nuts. Flair and Ramon both get disqualified, and Savage and Perfect emerge as the winners, just as they did in the real event, in the real world.
Yeah, I like that. I like that main event. It hits the beats. You're all set with how you want everything laid out. Savage and Perfect stand tall. I feel like we really wanted to give Savage that stage because, again, it felt like, because he started doing more commentating, I mean, he started really doing commentating in '91, and after he lost the title, he started kind of going back a little bit. And of course, he would join Raw pretty soon. I mean, pretty much immediately, right when Raw starts in 1993.
Right away. Yeah.
So right away. So I feel like we both wanted to give Savage that farewell in case we don't know what happens throughout '93, or does he get another match down the line? Will he wrestle at WrestleMania 10 2 years later? Like, we don't even know. So at least here he still gets that shot. So, but I like that. I like the pace of that match. I like that, Dave. That's I tell you, that is a great pay-per-view. Even that ridiculously awesome opener, which again, I could tell right now if he's listening. I know he's listening. My PIC, Mr. Azero, is smiling brightly because that is a him match during his fandom at that time in late 1992. So you got all his guys. So all right, so there we go. We kind of rebooked '92 the best we could, if that was the case. But I think we're both hitting the nail on the head that the roster in '92 just was not strong enough to be to have that many Survivor matches. I think that was ultimately the problem.
Yeah.
So, all right. Speaking of a problem, this is the first time through the Looking Glass history that Dave and I are going to do one together. Because this one was going to be really hard to do together, individually, because it was such a strange year that I feel like we kind of needed to do this one together, because trying to do two separate ones was just going to be absolute misery. So why don't you tee us up on what our next one is?
So, as I said, we're looking at years where maybe there weren't any Survivor matches at all, and a big standout is 1998, when we had our World Championship tournament after Austin had been stripped of the title. So after Austin had been pinned by Taker and Kane, and we went into the whole storyline there. For those of you who've lived under a rock and don't know have lived in hiding and don't know anything about Austin's run in '98, we're not going to take the time to do it now. But go and watch '98 Raws and catch up, because the Austin McMahon storyline is the greatest storyline in the history of professional wrestling,
pretty much.
But it resulted in the world title tournament at Survivor Series '98. So we didn't get a single Survivor match. So the question is asked, and we're asking the question, well, what if we did have a bunch of Survivor matches in 1998? What might it have looked like? And this is where it does become really hard, because '98 is such a fluid year. It's a year where, as McMahon liked to say, they moved away from good and bad, and we had the shades of grey. And when you look through the results of that year and look through what was going on any given week, you'd have guys just facing. It didn't matter whether they were being cheered, booed. There were just guys against whoever, and it becomes very hard to really work out where the lines are drawn. And I think that's part of the issue. So we're going to have a little bit of a go here. We're going to see what could have happened in '98 if we had some Survivor teams. It was certainly it's a big roster, but working out matchups has been the biggest difficulty. So we're going to go through this. We've got together a bit of a lineup. And we're gonna shoot from the hip, as they like to say, and we're gonna see what might have been our outcomes and our results on this event. Okay. So we're gonna kick it off. We're going to kick off our event with we're gonna see at this point in time. We want to get the fans going quite early. We want to get them up and out of their seats, and so our opening match today is going to see the WWF Tag Team Champions, the New Age Outlaws, joined by the team of Road Warrior Animal and Road Warrior Droz
Really?
against the Headbangers and their teammates, Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. Now, at the time, if you look at the time, the Outlaws as champions, the Headbangers were contenders. Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown had started tagging up pretty regularly as the nation had come to its conclusion, and they were getting title shots as well. And when you're looking for someone who can team with the Outlaws, the WWE have been putting a lot of emphasis on the storyline of Animal, Droz, and Hawk, and that whole very bad, when you look back on it now, very bad storyline. It was bad at the time, the whole Hawk thing, but they were pushing the concept of Droz teaming with Animal and being moved along as this new LOD. And I thought, well, this would be an opportunity for them to get a little bit, for them to continue to give Droz the opportunity to be showcased and highlighted. So there's our opening match, Scott. How do you see things perhaps working out here?
I feel like obviously we're continuing the extension of the DX Nation feud, even though the Nation, for lack of a better term at this point, is pretty much broken up. DX is still obviously running strong. So I like where that's going. The Headbangers and the LOD, it breaks my heart what happened to the Road Warriors and the whole Hawk jumping or getting pushed off all that shit. I hated that so much. So it sucked. So it's very hard for me to kind of wrap my head around the Road Warriors in the back end of 98. But I think you're going to see a lot of brawling. I think the Headbangers will probably eat some pins. I'm going to split the difference, and I think Animal and, say, Road Dogg are the survivors.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a weird combo because Road Dogg is a guy who can Road Dogg is a guy that, would look good as the last survivor. He could do dance in the ring and do cool stuff. And Animal is the legacy guy in that team. So Droz is going to have to eat it to pay his dues. So that's my take. I think eventually your survivors would be Animal and Droz. Animal and Road Dogg.
Okay.
Those are my survivors.
That's it. That's interesting. I think that by this point the aura of Hawk and Animal had definitely was no longer there. They'd suffered losses on. They'd suffered so many defeats on television and on pay-per-view by this point that, the unbeatable nature to them was gone. And with Droz in there, I actually think you probably see, I wouldn't be surprised if Animal was eliminated by someone like Mark Henry, the big power slam or the big, because Mark Henry's a guy on the rise, but his strength and power is something that could justify the elimination of Animal. I think that's the case. I think you're going to see, maybe Droz get a victory, get a pin over one of the Headbangers just to sort of help continue to elevate him a little bit, but he's probably going to get eliminated. Oh, dare I say it? Maybe by D'Lo. Dare I say Droz gets eliminated by D'Lo, foreshadowing.
Oh God! Oh no! Oh no! Oh boy!
I think that I think that I'd probably go a different route to you. I think that I potentially see the Outlaws getting down to maybe maybe we find ourselves in a situation where it's maybe one of the Headbangers and Mark Henry against the Outlaws. Road Dogg, maybe the Outlaws eliminate Henry, and then Road Dogg gets himself, or perhaps maybe take it back a step. Maybe one of the headbangers brings in the boom box, and Road Dogg grabs it off of him and smashes Mark Henry over the head with it right in front of the referee. Referee disqualifies Road Dogg. That allows Billy to get the easy pin on Henry, and then Billy gets the victory with the Famouser over the other headbanger. I'll probably see it being Billy Gunn that stands tall at the end rather than Road Dogg. But Road Dogg still being at ringside because he's taken the disqualification out to set up the victory.
Okay. I like that. You're putting over I think the right guys are going over there. I think you and I kind of have a similar idea there, but let's be honest, the tag division at the back end of '98 is not great. So I think we did our best to put that over. So, yeah, okay, I like that. All
right. Okay, so we're gonna move into our second match, and our second match of the card. Well, this is an absolute cluster. I don't know if that's a term in the US. It's clusterfuck, but I mean,
yes, it is.
That's what this is. That's what this is. We have the team of the Oddities, Kurgan, Golga, and Giant Silver, and their teammate Tiger Ali Singh against Skull and 8-Ball of the Disciples of Apocalypse, and the very unlikely teammates for them, Brian Christopher and Scott Too Hot Taylor. Too much. As I said, you've got all sorts of chaos in '98, people being mashed together left and right, trying to, with where the card eventually goes and other matches that have been put together here. This was sort of trying to get certain guys on the card and finding people who could just make up numbers is sort of how this one ends up. But the Oddities they'd had that shine at SummerSlam with that match against Kyan Tai at SummerSlam. The Oddities they got great reactions. They were a fun element that was still around in that late '98 time period.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the sort of event where the Oddities are probably going to Tiger Ali Singh probably gets eliminated very quickly.
Yeah.
And then I think the Oddities just run the gambit. I think each of them gets a moment to stand out and get a pin each, and in some way you're probably left with all three Oddities standing tall at the end.
Yeah. I think it kind of gotta, because I could see because this is the comedy match, so it's obviously Kurgan and Golga. They mess around with Scotty Too Hottie and Brian Christopher because they're both dopes. You need a comedy match. Maybe you put one of the other matches in between. And I think the Oddities are kind of over as like goobers. The baby faces like them. Yeah, I could see that. I could see Tiger Ali Singh getting eliminated, and then the Oddities eliminating all four of them.
Yeah,
and then you have Kurgan, Golga, and Giant Silva as your survivors, simply for that
dancing in the ring.
Yeah, exactly. And out comes the ICP. Yeah, I think that'll be fun. It'll be a fun mess for the crowd. Yeah, I tell you, what was it like, Dave, actually having this match kind of spin in your head?
It was just, like I said, it was like, well, you probably want the oddities on the card, but what do you do with them? Who do they go up against? Who do you sacrifice? So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one of those strange elements. And part of this is the result of when you're putting together a bunch of other guys in other matches, you end up with the leftovers. This really feels like the leftovers.
Yep. It absolutely is the leftovers, because the other mid-card match, not the gang one, but the other mid-card match we have has guys of consequence. So This is totally like this is literally the bottom end of the roster list. Is this match? I mean, seriously, the bottom end of the roster.
Yeah. Well, one step up from the bottom end of the roster would be our next match, and that is the team of Gangrel, Edge, and Christian, who are now together as the Brood, and they're going to be joined by Too Cold Scorpio, just because I couldn't find anyone else to team with them, and their opponents. Well, how's this for a bit of a mismatch of anything? You've got the recently formed Acolytes, Bradshaw and Farouk, and their teammates are going to be the two members of Kaientai, Taka Michinoku and Shofunaki. Now, I chose them because Taka and Christian were in the middle of the whole light heavyweight title battle, and it sort of connected them together. And I sort of felt that the Acolytes and the dark nature of what they're supposed to be would be a good counter for the concept of the Brood. So that's how this team came together.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, I think this is the sort of thing where probably see Kaientai go out early. Probably Christian and Taka have a bit of a battle in the ring. Funaki gets in at some point. Maybe Scorpio pins Funaki. Maybe Taka gets Scorpio out of the ring, and then maybe Christian defeats Taka. So you end up with the Brood against the Acolytes. But in this case, I think we've got the new team of the Acolytes. I think they are going to run absolutely roughshod over the three members of the Brood and eliminate them one by one to have them stand tall at the end of the match. That's how I would see this going.
Okay, I could go with that. I also I could see the Acolytes going over. This one you could probably flip a coin on, because you put it in the middle, the crowd will be hot. Obviously, Edge and Christian, getting over quickly, even with Gangrel. But I could see the Acolytes going over. This is like a card fit match. I think you could go either way with this one. Isn't it amazing, though? You think this roster's so loaded in 98, and then you're looking at these matches like, oh boy. Such a Vince Russo roster,
It is. Yeah, it's just that's the thing. It was very top heavy. The WWF in 98 is very top heavy.
Yep.
Which will come out in our last couple of matches. Now, before we get to them, I think the obvious thing that's going to be there is there was a women's title match on the Survivor Series, Sable and Jacqueline. I think that match is still there. It runs exactly the same way it did. Sable comes out on top and wins the women's title. I think that's the storyline that they've been building to, and you don't have the women on the roster yet to be able to do a women's match, a women's Survivor match. So Sable gets the win over Jackie, just like she did in our world.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We don't have to go much more into that. I agree with you on that. Sable was crazy over. This was the moment for her. There's no need. I don't think there's any need to change it.
All right. Okay, so our I guess our upper mid-card match, our semi-main, we have the team of Jeff Jarrett, the Blue Blazer, which everyone knows under the hood is Owen Hart, Mark Merrow, and the man's man, a real man's man, Stephen Regal, against the team of Steve Blackman, Al Snow, Goldust, and Val Venus. This was really that upper mid card. These were the guys that were holding together that upper mid card before you move into your main event group. So it felt fitting. They were all sort of battling each other anyway. This was the time that the whole Blue Blazers Steve Blackman storyline was around. So Jarrett Blazer and Blackman are all together. Goldust often got caught up in those sorts of elements. Al Snow, Val Venus, they're all in that upper level. So this made sense to put these guys together.
Yeah. I think that Owen is hilarious, but you've got all solid mid-card guys. Jarrett is obviously the higher of the mid-card at that point. I think this is a good chance for Steve Blackman. Obviously, it took him a while to get going, and he kind of lost his way a little in '99, and he started feuding with Shamrock. But this is a chance for Blackman. Goldust is in a weird place. He's back to being regular Goldust after whatever the hell he was earlier in the year.
This was the whole Shattered Dreams Goldust, wasn't it? Where he basically tried to end every match with the Shattered Dreams.
Yes. Yep. Every match was a nut shot. I actually somehow maybe disagree, Dave. I think Jarrett should be the survivor. You know, I think Jarrett should be the survivor here because I think he's the one that needs to be put over as the probably the highest of this group. Maybe even help maybe Regal too if you're going down that path. But this is a match definitely where the heels get it put over.
Yeah, I think. I'd agree. I think where you might see this going is probably someone gets a victory over maybe Mark Merrow early on. Maybe Blackman gets a good win on Merrow. You could have Goldust get himself disqualified, hitting a Shattered Dreams on maybe the real man's man, Stephen Regal, which creates the situation then for Regal to be eliminated. But I think at some point, Blackman gets eliminated by chasing the Blue Blazer out of the ring. That whole storyline, trying to unmask the Blazer and prove it's Owen, and Owen probably does a runner. And Blackman chases him to be counted out of the ring, leaving Jarrett to probably get a final pin over someone like either Val Venus or Al Snow.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I could see that too. I feel like the two guys that should be highlighted would be not even Owen if he's in the Blazer suit, but Jarrett and Goldust. That's who I feel like that should be the two guys that maybe you want to kind of highlight there. But it's amazing though. Like, the weird thing about the mid card, it's funny we're looking at this, Dave, because I feel like the mid card was so level. Like you had your main event guys, and we'll get to them in a second. But then you have like this group of mid carders that really nobody stood out. Like everybody was even. And that's tough, but I think after X-Pac, beat Jarrett at SummerSlam and cut his hair, I feel like Jarrett's going to get the push. Yeah. But I like the Shattered Dreams Goldust, but that's a unique match. It's very different. A lot of good workers. I think the match itself, like the actual meat and potatoes, is pretty good.
Yeah.
But that's another match where I think you can go either way.
Oh, all right. Well, let's move on to our main event, and this is going to be. I've added some stipulations to our main event. So, our main event, because we don't have a world champion at the moment, Vince has decreed that our main event match, the sole survivor of this match, will become the world champion, the WWF champion. Now, if there are multiple people from the same team make it through and survive, they will immediately go into a match for the world title. So if two members of the same team are the last two standing, they then immediately fight each other, which, as we've said, in 1998, everyone wrestled everyone, so you could get away with that
pretty much.
sort of stipulation. And it's a very much a Russo type stipulation where, you change things on the fly and move it around. So our two teams for this World Heavyweight Championship match, Survivor match. On one side, we have the captain, The Undertaker, and his teammates, the Big Boss Man, Ken Shamrock, and Mankind. How this team will get along is beyond me. And their opponents are captained by Stone Cold Steve Austin, and his teammates are Kane, X-Pac, noting that Triple H was out injured at the time, and The Rock. So this was getting all the big guys into the match. When I looked at the roster, you really had the situation where, Austin's been dealing with Taker, Rock's been battling out with Mankind and Shamrock, Bossman represents Vince, Kane and Taker don't get along anymore. So it really just became a mismatch, a mashup of which guys are going to probably work together best, but at the same time, or have the same philosophy. You've got that idea that Shamrock was on his own. He wasn't with Vince at the time, but we're heading in that direction. But he'd clearly turned heel. Mankind was supposed to be working for Vince. Bossman works for Vince, and Taker, Taker is the darker side of that Taker Kane lineup, and that's how our teams are put together. Now, I'm going to throw out how I see this match probably panning out. At various points, I think the Boss Man goes quickly. Maybe The Rock eliminates him, very similar to what he did in the tournament. I think Taker and Kane eliminate each other. Maybe Mankind takes X-Pac up. But we're going to end up in a situation where you've got Austin and The Rock and Mankind as your last three remaining guys. And Austin is battling Mankind, and I see that the referee gets taken out. And at this point, Austin's got Mankind covered. In comes Shane. As we know, 1, 2, doesn't count the 3. He flips Austin off. Austin gets up absolutely livid. And while this is happening, The Rock comes from behind. He levels Austin, takes him down. Mankind gets the pin to a fast count, at which point we're left with Mankind and Rock. Mankind looking a little confused, and immediately Vince and sort of Shane and Rock, Mankind's looking around going, what's just happened? I'm not sure what's going on. And Rock just turns and drops him with a rock bottom. And we get the 1, 2, and Mankind lifts his shoulder up, but Shane still counts the 3, which allows you to then move into that storyline that came out of the real Survivor Series. Rock is crowned world champion. Mankind can stand up and say, I got my shoulder up. I didn't get beaten. I didn't get pinned. And Vince and Shane and The Rock, they beat down Mankind. They celebrate in the ring. Austin comes back out to lay waste to everyone, but we have our build towards coming out of there of The Rock and Mankind gonna go into their series, and Austin being built for that Mania match.
Well done, Dave. No, I feel like they could have done. I mean, because that's booked exactly like that match could have been if we were doing that Survivor match in 1998. I think that's perfect. I applaud you for that because, again, you went down a pretty deep. This is like advanced master's class in match booking slop. So, not easy to do. Definitely not easy to do with that lack of depth. Because we took on 2 years here, 1992 and 1998, where we had no depth. 92, we just didn't have the bodies. In 98, we had the bodies, but there was other than the main event guys, the Steves, the Rocks, the Mankind's, there really was no depth in the mid card. Everybody just seemed kind of the same, and that's tough. That's not easy to do, to try to generate matches, but that's a good main event. I like that. That would sell tickets, Dave. That would sell tickets, I think. And then obviously you kind of took the tournament and teamed it. And that's what had to be done. So I like that. That was very good. All right, everybody, you got to cut us some. You got to give Big Dave the props. Somebody send him a lamb for the holidays. He deserves it for number one, putting together that Damian Demento opener, and secondly, for somehow putting together a legit Survivor Series card for 1998, because that's kind of crazy. So there you go.
There we go. All right. Well,
all right.
Let's jump down another hole now, and we're going to consider the idea that the Survivor Series might have started earlier than 1987. We're going to jump back and look at the fact that instead of getting the Wrestling Classic in 1985, Vince had the concept of the Survivor Series as early as 1985. And we're going to look at what might teams of 5 striving to survive in 1985 and 1986 look like. Mm-hmm. And I think this is going to be fun, looking at these two years and seeing how things match up. Because they're very old school. Obviously, that old school time period, the rosters, there's a lot of movement and change. But you've got guys that are really sort of, I think, come together really well. So let's go down 1985. Vince McMahon has announced that there is a new pay-per-view for the first time ever. Pay-per-view. He's going to launch a pay-per-view event for the first time under the concept of the Wrestling Classic, yet this is the Survivor Series. Survivor Series 1985, hosted by Vince McMahon, with Gorilla Monsoon on commentary. How do you see this card looking, Scott? This sort of came out of your mind, the build for this idea. So give me some of your thoughts here. What do you see as a Survivor Series card in 1985?
You, David Hall, are going to love my 85 Survivor Series card. I did what you did. Let's put it this way. The 3 singles matches, the 3 matches involving singles wrestlers are 4-on-4. My tag is 6-on-6. So here we go. I have a women's Survivor Series.
Oh.
All right. Your heels are Fabulous Moolah, Judy Martin, Leilani Kai, and Donna Christianello, because I think she was always a heel. Your baby faces are Wendy Richter. So in our world, the original screw job didn't happen. Wendy Richter, Velvet McIntyre, Desiree Peterson, and Cyndi Lauper.
Whoa.
She's like, listen, she's still pissed at Moolah and Lanny Kai, as she said at WrestleMania. Not Leilani Kai, Lanny Kai, like Lanny Poffo. Lanny Kai. And she says, I want to be in the match. And we get local promos, we get stuff on the syndicated shows like, Cyndi, you sure you want to do this? You're a singer, You got to make money and help and sing and make people happy. And we don't want you coming in here and Moolah's going to drive her thumb into your throat or whatever. And I think in the end, the baby faces win. I think Moolah bails, or she gets pinned by Wendy Richter to keep Wendy strong and keep that feud going. Because I think Moolah does beat Wendy still, but Wendy kind of goes with it. And again, like I said, in our universe, Wendy doesn't get kicked out of the company. So that's my women's match. You're like, oh my God, I think I'd rather watch Damian Demento.
I hadn't considered the women. I didn't go down that line, but I like it. I like the idea. I think it would be a good payoff to see Cindy in the ring to sort of end that that role that she'd played, and you can see her wanting to get involved. Probably like Mr. T. Well, Mr. T did it. I can do it too. And Wendy doing everything she can to protect Cyndi Lauper and not wanting her to get hurt, and sort of Wendy coming in and maybe doing a couple of slaps, but then having to run and tag out because she's going to get absolutely pummeled. That I could see it happening. I was just looking online, and it's interesting to note that the screw job for Wendy Richter's screw job happened on November 25, 1985. So if a Survivor Series match occurred around Thanksgiving, you probably wouldn't have got the screw job because they probably would have held it off for a few days.
Right. If they ended up doing it. Yeah. If they ended up doing it. Yep.
So Wendy Richter would still, good role. I hadn't thought of using her because I didn't realize the screw job had happened that close to the Thanksgiving time slot. But no, that's good. I like that. I think it's a good way to do it, and I think it's a good way to finish that storyline that had played up. So especially if you are going to end up going, if Vince does end up going down the line of taking the belt off Wendy Richter and she's going to leave the company or whatever, you've put a bow on that storyline quite well.
Mm. Okay, good. I glad you like that. I was getting a little nervous that you're like, oh my God, you stuck these women in this. But oh my God, what was next? You're gonna find. I was trying to find who the women were in the women's one in what was it, 87, I think, or 88. Yeah. Okay, next up is my tag, and it's 6-on-6, 3 tag teams each side. So on the heel side, you have the Dream Team, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. They're the champions at the moment. The Hart Foundation and the Moondogs against the British Bulldogs, the Killer Bees, and the debuting new U.S. Express of Mike Rotundo and Dan Spivey. So it's a 6-on-6, 3 tag teams on each side, and obviously the Bulldogs will be the survivors because you want to push them going into 1986 and heading towards WrestleMania 2 when they win the titles. So I think it's a good balance. I think that at the moment, unfortunately, the only guys I don't have in this card. See, the problem was I wanted to add the Foreign Legion of Iron Sheik and Nikolai, but I couldn't think of another babyface team.
Oh, let me throw this one out and see if you've included these guys on somewhere else on your card, because how about the team of Uncle Elmer and Cousin Luke?
I did not I did not because Justin and I have always decided to never put the Hillbillies in anything. It's like the same thing with Mitch. So, but no, I did not put them in there. So yeah, I could put Uncle Elmer and Cousin Junior and then stick the Foreign Legion
on the other side.
Yeah. All right. Good. All right. So we do that then. And I would
and get rid of Elmer and Luke very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Elmer falls over, whatever. But the end, you definitely want to put over the Bulldogs because they're the hot babyface team, and they're the ones that you obviously have booked to look strong at the beginning of the year, and of course win the titles at WrestleMania 2. So there you have that. So thank you for adding the Hillbillies,
that's
Dave.
Right. And I think it's something you were talking about, the debuting new US Express. It was around when I've looked at the history of WWF, it was around that time in November where Wyndham left the company. So perhaps the original advertising would have been Wyndham going to be on the card, but then on the night we've got Wyndham has left and Rotundo has found a new member for the US Express, and they're going to be even better than the way you would promote it in the WWF, knowing it's not true, but that push could come, that who's his partner, and then he brings out the new member of the US Express, Dan Spivey, and you can push that element. So how would you be looking at giving Spivey and Rotundo a pretty strong rub if you've got this concept that Spivey's taken over for Wyndham and Rotundo being the former champion?
Hmm. Yeah. No,
Like,
I like that.
Is it just the Bulldogs that survive, or do the New US Express maybe get the opportunity to join them?
You could do that, sure, because most of the teams on that, most of the tag teams, I mean, you could eat the Moondogs. The Heart Foundation aren't even established yet, so that's fine. The Dream Team are the tag team champions, so you'd have to do something where they,
It's important that the Bulldogs beat that one of the Bulldogs, that whether it be Dynamite or Davey Boy, one of them is pinning someone like Beefcake for that final one. That win over the Dream Team has to come from the Bulldogs.
Yeah, it has to be. I don't think there's any doubt. It's got to be. So that's my tag. I tried to it was for this moment. It was all about making sure the Bulldogs get over, and the Dream Team is the as the top heels while they're the champions. So.
No, I like that match. I agree. I love that tag team. I always love that tag team concept. I know that the number of teams, and it became awkward. The reason they stopped doing it is because there's just too many men around the ring, so it made it difficult for people sitting at ringside to see the action. And I get why they stopped it, but one of my favorite all-time matches is that 89 tag team, that 88 tag team match with Demolition and the double turn with them and the Powers of Pain, and you just got all the great tag teams in there. So I've always loved those tag team matches. So to be able to put one on in 85 I think there's a lot of good talent there. You'd see, I think you'd see some really good work. Like Brett and Amber would be able to show potential of where they're going to go, and they could have a good series in ring with the Bulldogs and a good series in ring with the Bees, and maybe even Brett gets a pin over one of the Bees to sort of help elevate them before they get eliminated. But I think there's a lot of room there. And like you said, you've got guys like the Moondogs who can go. Sheik and Volkov were already starting to be on fumes by this point, and they could be easily accounted for in some way as well.
I agree. I appreciate that. Thank you, Dave. I really wanted to really push the tags, and push the Bulldogs because they were the sexy team. All right, here's my mid-card match. You might laugh at this, but maybe not. On the heel side, Randy Savage, King Kong Bundy, Adrian Adonis, Terry Funk. And on the face side, Ricky Steamboat, Tito Santana, Corporal Kirshner, and Ivan Putski. Putski's with the company because he was in the Wrestling Classic. And this is one where, A, the heels get put over, and B, this is where it's on this pay-per-view that you begin the Steamboat Savage run. And maybe Steamboat, maybe gets a lucky move on Savage, maybe, gets a roll-up or whatever, and then he gets bludgeoned by Bundy or something. But I think Savage probably, or Bundy, stands tall here.
Yeah, absolutely. Bundy needs to stand tall here. Maybe Savage doesn't get the Savage could be counted out or even disqualified. Perhaps Steamboat catches, Steamboat's work in the ring sort of starts to frustrate Savage, and Savage gets a pair of brass knucks or grabs a chair and wallops him to get himself disqualified, or maybe Savage just does the walk. He's had enough, a couple of near falls, and he just rolls out and heads to the back. You could see that happening a couple of ways there. I've got a question for you. The using of Putski, I'm going to throw out a name who was on the roster in 85, who I wonder if you've got him. I don't know that you'll have him in your main event. King Tonga. Did you have him in your main event? Because he'd already made his appearance by this point.
Actually, I don't. I totally forgot about. Well, when we get to 86, we'll talk a little King Tonga.
We will.
I actually did not have King Tonga anywhere on my card. So good call there, Dave.
So maybe slotting Tonga in for Putski would make the would mean we don't have to be subjected to the horrible concept of Ivan Putski trying to continue his career for one last match.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Polish power. But obviously the heels win here because all the heels are great and they all got big things. All four of them, Funk, Adonis, and obviously particularly Savage and Bundy have big things planned for 1986. So, okay. Ready for this main event?
I think this is going to be a doozy.
Yep. I kind of tightened up that War Games match. And if you want to know the War Games match, check out last month's episode. On the heel side, Roddy Piper. And actually this one, again, 4-on-4. Roddy Piper, Magnificent Morocco, Cowboy Bob Orton, Big John Studd. On the face side, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, JYD, and Paul Orndorff, who is now babyface. Great match, but one of two things can happen. Piper eats the pin on Hogan to end the feud permanently, or it comes down to Hogan Piper because Vince doesn't care about shows ending in DQs in 1985. And King Kong Bundy comes out just like he did at War Games and keeps antagonizing the champion, demanding a world title match. So it could work either way there. But I think another hot main event. Again, you could finish off the Hogan-Piper feud and have Hogan just pin him if Piper cares, which at the time he usually did. Or you maybe have like the match ended at DQ when Bundy comes in and beats the shit out of Hogan. What do you think?
Well, I don't think Piper would want to get pinned. I think he needs to be DQ'd in some way. But I mean, that's the clear cut main event. Andre, JYD, Hogan, and Orndorff. You're seeing them all together. I think you've got it pretty well there. I think I could see, maybe you look instead of maybe the way that the WWF often worked is sort of having guys. We saw over the years in events like the Rumble and the Survivor Series where guys go into the match with one feud operating and come out with another. Maybe you morph Piper off onto Orndorff more permanently by having Orndorff and Piper brawl to the back.
Good point. Okay.
To both get counted out of the ring, to get them both out of the way without having to sacrifice either of them.
Yeah, and the other problem is Andre. I don't know what you do there because obviously
I think at the end you would have Andre and Hogan standing tall at the end.
Yeah,
and Hogan would get the win.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, one thing I'm going to throw out something to consider, because maybe the main event could be a 5-man match, because I had pretty well the same main event plotted, but there are two other guys that were still competing. One who was a very big tie-in to Hogan is Hillbilly Jim. He was heavily associated with Hogan.
Yes, he was.
On the heel side, there is a guy who was still in and out of the ring at this point. He wasn't fully retired yet, still appearing in matches in late 1985, who I think it would be fantastic for him to have that one opportunity to appear in ring on WWF pay-per-view, and that's none other than Jesse the Body Ventura.
Oh, okay.
So you could bring them in, and look, I'm sorry, Jess, you are going to have to lay down if you're going to be in this match. Vince has sort of said, look, if you're going to be in it, you're going to lay down. and Jesse is going to get beat probably by Hogan, maybe by Andre. Maybe Andre can eliminate Jesse, but I think, yeah. Look, overall, I think in the end, you're going to want Andre and Hogan standing tall. They were the top two guys. I mean, Hogan was your number one guy, but Andre at that point in '85 was what Undertaker became at the back end of his career when it came to Mania. He was untouchable. He wasn't going to lose. He wasn't going to be beaten, and Andre needs to be standing tall and proud. But Hogan probably gets the last pin, maybe a pin over Orton. Maybe Cowboy Bob is the one who takes the final loss to end the match.
Okay. All right, I'm good with that. I didn't think of Jesse because I wasn't sure if he, maybe he'd have to bow out early. Maybe in our alternate universe he doesn't have his lung issues. And yeah, I did forget Hillbilly Jim. That's on me. I didn't even think of that, but good addition. I kind of wanted to. I guess part of me wanted to keep that main event tight, and only do 4-on-4. But I'm okay adding both those guys to the match. I'm fine with that. But now that I think about it, maybe the Bundy thing doesn't happen, and Piper and Orndorff brawl, and it comes down to Hogan and Andre against like Morocco and Stud. Orton and JYD eliminate each other or whatever. Maybe Orton pins JYD with like tights or something, and then somebody beats Orton, and it comes down to Andre and Stud against Hogan and Morocco, and Andre and Hogan take care of business. Obviously you can't have Hogan. Yeah, and I think that's a good feel good moment. And listen, another piece of fine cinema for a year and a half later when we're building WrestleMania 3. So to have both of them standing tall. So there's my 85 Survivor Series card, Dave, which I think would sell tickets in Richfield, Ohio. Something tells me, you know what, Dave? I think because it's a classic venue that never got its due, I think you have to put you at Maple Leaf Gardens. I feel like the original Maple Leaf Gardens with the ramp and everything never got like the big show. What was the first Toronto pay-per-view? WrestleMania 6? And it wasn't even at Maple Leaf Gardens. So I think if we're going to do that, I think we got to give Maple Leaf Gardens a big show. So I say we put it there. WrestleMania was already at the Garden, so you can't do it there. So give a little love to Jack Tunney's brother and have the Survivor Series at Maple Leaf Gardens. Just my opinion.
Yep. It'd be it'd be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what venue in Australia in 1985 could you have like an international Survivor Series?
The sad thing is back then we really didn't have those. Australia never really had mega venues until around about 2000 when the Olympics came to Australia. The biggest sort of Sydney had the Sydney Entertainment Centre, which held about maybe 8,500, if even that. Brisbane Entertainment Centre, similar sort of 6,000-7,000. Those were sort of the bigger venues in Australia. It wasn't until 2000 that they purpose built larger venues to cater to the bigger crowds that would come with an Olympic arrival. And obviously 85 they weren't really doing stadium shows. Right. So that's really all that Australia had. You either had your big sporting stadiums or you had these smaller 7 to 8, 9,000 seat venues, which they're not going to quite generate the atmosphere that the WWF would want for a massive pay-per-view.
Okay. I was just trying to give you a little international flair, give you some love. But I would have put it at Maple Leaf Gardens. I think that would have been a pretty cool venue for it. So.
Yeah.
So. All right. So for our last stop on the tour tonight, what do we got?
We're going to go ahead 12 months. We're going to move to 1986. and we're going to, because we've launched Survivor Series in '85. Well, we've got to have one in '86,
That is
and
true.
and so we're going to see where things go into '86. And in 1986, unfortunately, they did away with the tag team match, and they mixed the tag teams up through the other matches, and the reason that needed to be happened is there was an uneven balance. I could not find a way to get a full 5-team tag team match up without it looking, there was one side of the coin that was lacking due to where our main event is going to go. So let me introduce you to our 5 matches. Our kickoff match. We've got four matches of 5 cards. So at the time, our lower mid card match. The first team is captained by the Junkyard Dog, and his teammates are Coco Beware, the Rebel Dick Slater, and the recently formed team of Haku and Tama, the Islanders, talking about King Tonga. Although I think at this point they were still King Tonga and the Tonga Kid. I don't think it was until '87 where they had the name change. So, and on the other side we have the team of Jake the Snake Roberts as the captain, and his teammates are the Samoan Seeker, the Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine, and their partner and new ally, Canada's strongest man, Dino Bravo.
Oh, okay.
Who just recently arrived in the company at that point. And look, this is a match where I think the key to this match is probably we want Jake to come out on top. Jake is on the rise. Jake is about to turn babyface. He's got the match with Randy Savage on Saturday night's main event coming up soon. And so, in the end, we're probably going to see, I think maybe Haku and Tama eliminate Seeker. The family connections there between Tama and Seeker, the Tonga Kid and Seeker. They're probably going to get rid of Seeker quite early. I think Dino Bravo is probably going to eliminate Dick Slater. I think the Dream Team and the Islanders are probably going to end up eliminating each other. I think, all 4 men battling in the ring, that old syndrome. Jake's going to drop Coco with the DDT, but prior to that, I think JYD is probably going to do something stupid. He's going to get himself unintentionally disqualified or counted out. Maybe counted out. Maybe he's chasing Jake around the ring, and Jake gets back in the ring, and JYD doesn't quite get there in time. Gets himself counted out, and then Jake drops Coco with the DDT to win the match and let Damien come out to play.
I like that match. I have those guys. I have a very much more truncated card, but I have some of those guys sprinkled around to other places. I like that. That's a fun little opener. I think the Jake thing, because we're in the back end of '86. That's very interesting for Jake, because we're not sure where you want to go with him. But I like
said,
that.
It's just before his face turns. So I think they're wanting to push Jake and the whole DDT and the snake thing. I think they're wanting they're seeing the reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I like the Jake thing. I do. I like that. You have the Islanders. I did not have the Islanders, although I do have one half of the Islanders. Yeah. Well played, Dave. I like that one. I only have 3 matches because I loaded up on the back end. So this is, I guess, maybe there'll be a lot of interviews and stuff, and maybe Bobby talks about, because I don't have Andre. Well, I have Andre in this match, but I kind of don't. You'll know what I mean.
Yeah.
My main event's badass. You'll love it. But mine's going to be very interview heavy, because I think Bobby starts the wheels in motion on the Andre stuff. This is So why don't you give me your next match?
All right.
Do you have a tag? Do you have a match with tags?
I don't have it. I don't have a match with only the tag teams. I've scouted the tag teams through the card.
Okay, go ahead. Do your next match then, because then I'll do my first match, which is a tag. So go ahead.
All right. Well, my second match is the team captained by the Intercontinental Champion Randy Savage, Macho Man Randy Savage, and his teammates are the Natural Butch Reed, Kamala, and Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. And their opponents are the team. Well, I'm going to leave the captain for last because the teammates are the British Bulldogs, the WWF Tag Team Champions, Tito Santana, the recently arrived Billy Jack Haynes, and this team was supposed to be captained by Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. But about 2 weeks prior to this event, Randy Savage on Superstars of Wrestling put Steamboat out during their Intercontinental title matches, has draped him, thrown over, and dropped the bell on him, and Steamboat is out with his throat injury. And stepping in to the spot as captain of the team, Bruno Sammartino.
Damn you. You stole my thunder because I thought I was the only one that was going to use Da Bruyne. But yeah. Well, Bruno Savage, don't forget, I mean, they were having banger matches at the beginning of 86.
Well, that was Bruno stepped in. Bruno stepped into a series of matches with Savage when they did the Steamboat injury angle. Because Bruno sort of at the end of that Superstars taping, Bruno is trying to get an update. Savage comes out, and Bruno they basically end up fighting backstage. And then if you look at history of WWE, Bruno had a series of matches with Savage as Steamboat's substitute. So it sort of felt fitting to sort of follow that lead.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Now, I think in this case, we're going to look. You bring him out. You've got to have him. You've got to have him survive. I see this as probably Savage taking care of Tito Santana early. I think Billy Jack Haynes is probably going to eliminate Kamala. The Bulldogs will take care of Sheik and Volkov, and then you probably, I think you'll find Butch Reed gets rid of Billy Jack Haynes. Sammartino gets a pin on Reed, and Savage sees the numbers. It's 3-on-1. Savage picks up the title, grabs Elizabeth by the hand. He heads to the back. He doesn't want to have a piece of Bruno. He doesn't want to in any way subject himself to this. I think at this point, Savage's character, it opened the idea that Savage would take care of himself, and he'd take the count-out loss rather than have to deal with an angry Bruno in this situation. And so Savage takes the count-out loss, and our survivors are the tag team champions, the Bulldogs, and Bruno Sammartino. Because, as I said, you can't have Bruno make a comeback and not survive. Sort of painted myself into a corner there. I sort of realized that after I booked it.
I kind of painted myself into a corner too, but my main event is probably a little different in terms of what to do with certain legends. But I like that. I like that a lot, actually. There's a lot of good heat there, and legends aren't treated the same in different eras. And I'll make that point when I get to my main event. But Bruno brings obviously the hardcore old school fan, and for old school in 1986, we're talking the 70s. So, yeah, I like that. Dave. The mid card in 86 was actually pretty good.
It is.
There are a lot of bodies, you know.
Very, very, very strong.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well,
Good
let's hear your tag. You said you've put together a tag team match, a
I
tag team
did.
battle. So let's hear your tag team battle.
All right. So on the babyface side, similar to 85, but a little different. Again, the British Bulldogs, who are at this time they're the World Tag Team Champions. The Killer Bees, because they're around, and the team of Tito Santana and the Junkyard Dog. On the babyface side, on the heel side, you have the team of our Foundation, who at the time are slowly working their way up to be number one contenders. The Dream Team, the former tag team champions, and the Funks. Jimmy Jack and Haas and Terry. I don't know if Terry was still there in 86 at the end of 86. I think he was.
I think Terry had left by this point, and they were using Jimmy Jack in his place.
Okay, so all right, so I'll stick that in. I'll use the Prime Universe and the alternate universe as the same. So we'll say I just put the Funks, so I'll say Haas and Jimmy Jack. The Dream Team, Valentine and Beefcake, and Anvil and Brett against the Bulldogs, the Bees, and the team of Tito and JYD, which is kind of an extension of the feud that went on in 86, of course, at WrestleMania 2. So, again, I think this is a pure talent match with a ton of back and forth and fun in ring. And I think you have the heels win here with the Har Foundation and standing tall alone at the end. I think you maybe have some miscommunication, and Beefcake costs his team the elimination, which maybe leads to dissension, or maybe have Valentine because you want Beefcake to turn face. So maybe you have Valentine cause some miscommunication and lead to them getting pinned, and it's causing their dissension into 1987. And I think the Har Foundation maybe stand tall, or you have it end in a double DQ, and you've got the Hearts and the Bulldogs brawling to end the match, and maybe it ends in a double count out or a double DQ or something. That depends on how you would want to book going into 87 with the team, with the tag teams. So
yeah, you probably want to have something where, I guess if you want to do booking 101, like you said, you probably want Brett and Anvil to probably get the shock victory over the Bulldogs in some way, whether it be the roll up, the cheating, or they're the last two teams and Bulldogs get counted out or something like they grit the count out. I think it'd be a good opportunity that this match could be refereed by Danny Davis. And
well, I was about to say that. Yep. Yeah, Danny Davis. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yep.
Yeah, and Danny Davis does something to something shady that allows Brett and Anvil to stand tall at the end.
Yep.
No
problem with that. Yeah, no problem with that at all. Okay, cool. Excellent.
All right.
Your turn.
All right. So my semi-main event. On the heel side, we have the team captained by the adorable Adrian Adonis, and his teammates are his bodyguard, the ace cowboy Bob Orton, and good friend and associate, the magnificent Morocco. And they're joined by Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the Hart Foundation. And opposing them is the team captained by Rowdy Roddy Piper. And his teammates include Jacques and Raymond, the Rougeau brothers. And because Roddy Piper does not care who his teammates are and just thinks he can win with any old people, he's joined by Pedro Morales and Dan Spivey. Now, I'll admit this was another case of struggling to find some people to make up the numbers of my teams. There are a couple of people that I wanted to avoid using. Number one, I didn't want to have two sets of tag teams together, so I made the choice to put the Rougeos in rather than the Killer Bees. And the Honky Tonk Man had debuted in the company at this point, but I didn't want him in any way to be associated with Roddy Piper, so I left Honky off the card altogether. So trying to find a scratch there. End up with Spivey and Pedro as our two guys. I think this match you're going to see Brett and Anvil deal with the Rougeau brothers. They'll probably get a pin on one of them, and maybe Orton hits the superplex on the other. So we'll be sitting at 5-on-3. I then think you're going to have maybe at this point after Brett maybe gets a pin on maybe Brett gets the pin on Raymond and he's sort of celebrating, and Piper comes up and rolls him up from behind, grabs the tights and manages to eliminate Brett in a bit of a shocking way, because I again found myself booked into a corner because we've got a tag team that we want to build who are going to be champions soon, but I didn't want them to be at the end. I didn't want them to make it to the end. So I thought, no, having Piper maybe get the quick shock roll up on Brett would work. Neidhart probably gets counted out or disqualified, annoyed by that. Orton, Morocco, and Adonis easily deal with Spivey and Pedro. So we end up 3-on-1. Rowdy Roddy Piper versus Adrian Adonis, Ace Cowboy Bob Orton, Don Morocco. I see this one of those typical standard what you see, almost probably similar to Roddy Piper, Jake the Snake when he ended up against in the 1990 Survivor Series where he was up against the Visionaries.
Mm-hmm.
That was 1990 against the Visionaries.
Yep.
He probably he's battling, he's struggling. I think he gets a bit of a roll up. He gets sort of the shock roll up on Ace to sort of deal with his former bodyguard. He gets again some form of grabbing the tights, putting his feet on the ropes to eliminate Morocco. But I think those happen very quickly, and then all three of them just jump him. And Adonis, Orton, and Morocco just lay a beat down on Piper. Piper is given the victory by disqualification, but he's lying there in a bloody mess at the end of the match to continue to build to that, wanting to get his hands on Adonis one-on-one.
Right. Yes. I like that. So in your universe, Piper doesn't leave. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Piper had just returned. The whole Piper's Pit Flower Shop angle happened in September, October.
Okay.
So,
I just want to make sure. Okay.
So he was back and
right.
Yeah, it's all built around. This was all built around that angle. And this is sort of the first step, Piper in the ring with him, which is why he doesn't care who his partners are. He doesn't really bother with them. But in the end, he comes out with the win, but it's Adonis, Orton, and Morocco who still look very strong, having beaten him to a bloody pulp.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. In my world, Piper does not wrestle. But we'll get more into that in the main event.
Okay.
But I like your match. That's an excellent match full of mid-cards. Here's mine. I have 4-on-4 for this one. On the... Did I do that right? Okay. Just want to make sure I typed that right. Oh, okay. So, on the heel side, Randy Savage, Jake Roberts, the Magnificent Morocco, and Hercules. And on the babyface side, Ricky Steamboat, Dick Slater, Tonga Kid. I'm sorry, King Tonga, a.k.a. Future Haku, and Billy Jack Haynes. So, I think this is going to be a crazy brawl. I think Steamboat and Savage are the survivors. And since this is an alternate universe, Dave, this is where Savage attacks Steamboat.
Oh,
and injures his throat.
Yep.
And it ends in a DQ, and Steamboat wins the match, but he's sitting there spitting up blood, and it's the same thing as happened in our Prime universe, except it happens at this pay-per-view.
Oh, I like that. So are you giving the victory to Savage, or is Savage getting disqualified?
Savage is getting disqualified.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter in the end. In the end, it's all about Steamboat getting fucking jumped, and because obviously the building up is Steamboat is obviously a threat to Savage's Intercontinental title. So obviously, like in real life, in the Prime universe, this is what happens. Except they do it here, and Savage says, "You know what? Fuck this Survivor shit. I don't care." And he attacks Steamboat and goes through the whole throat thing, and we begin the build for them to the big match at the Silverdome. So,
no, I like that. I like that idea. What would you do? How would you get Jake out of the match? Because that's the only the combination of Savage and Jake. Jake was such a rising star at this point. How are you going to eliminate Jake without making him look weak?
Maybe DDT. I don't know, one of the scrubs like Dick Slater or somebody on the floor. I know it's all DQs and everybody hates that, but maybe he DDTs Dick Slater on the floor, takes him out. Because by the beginning of '87, he's gone, Dick Slater, pretty much. So
yeah.
Maybe he DDTs him on the floor and they get double DQ'd, something like that. I know all these DQs is annoying, but unfortunately, when you're putting all these fucking rising studs in these matches, somebody it's kind of hard, But you're gonna hate what I do in the main event, but it's 5 straight DQs. No, it's not. No, this isn't the '89. This isn't the '89 Survivor Series when Hogan's team disqualifies everybody. So yeah, I think it's similar to what happened with Savage. I think with Steamboat earlier in the year. I think Jake like DDTs somebody, I don't care, Slater or somebody, and gets DQ'd.
Okay.
But now obviously Jesse can say things like, "These guys don't care about wins and losses, Gorilla. They just want to take guys out. They don't get the purse money. They make enough money, Gorilla. It's not about money."
Finish. Yeah.
I was about to say it's about taking out all of Hogan's allies. So come the main event, he's got nobody to save him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
what about with Jake? What if he was to get the pin? Like, what if he was to take out like you said, Dick Slater in the ring, and because he's DDT'd him, he gets the snake out and refuses to take the snake away, and that leads to the DQ. So he's got the snake out. He's threatening the referee with the snake. He's refusing to put the snake back in the bag, and he gets the warning if you don't, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they send him to the back because he won't put the snake away. Then we still get to see the snake.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true too. Yep. That's true too.
Either way, the only way to probably keep him strong is to have some form of DQ, which is like you said, we don't have all these DQs, but it But it was also very common, like we said, back in those early Survivor series when they were trying to keep guys strong for the house show circuit and for the feuds. That's how they did it. Countouts and DQs was the way to protect people. So
yeah.
And
when I got a team, I got a heel team that's got both Savage and Jake on it. I mean, what are you gonna do? There's nothing you can do about it.
And Morocco, who at the time was still quite high on the card.
Yeah. So, but Morocco, you could kind of eat that a little bit. Besides, Morocco was sliding down the heel card anyway, and he was going to get reinvented, so it's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
main event time.
The main events. Okay.
Yes.
So my main event is going to see the Heenan family in their entirety. Paul Orndorff, Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, the King Harley Race, and the Mighty Hercules all teaming up to take on the team of Hulk Hogan, the Machines, the Giant Machine, the Big Machine, and the Super Machine. And they're joined by, well, look, you can probably throw one of two or three guys into the mix, either Hillbilly Jim or George the Animal Steel, probably under a mask with the machine gimmick, sort of, like they were doing on the house show circuit, the Animal Machine or the Hillbilly Machine or something like that. But that I really felt I wanted to play on that machine storyline with the Heenan family, but at the same time you had the Orndorff Hogan angle going. So I really wanted to put that together. But you've got 5 Heenan members, 3 Machines and Hogan, so someone else has got to come into the mix. It probably doesn't matter whether it's Hillbilly Jim, George the Animal Steel, someone who is going to be accepted as they're associated with Hogan. They're going to be there, but they're probably going to be the first person eliminated as well. So that's our main event. Now, before we get to that, probably earlier in the night, Mean Gene is actually going to have interviewed Andre the Giant backstage. He's going to have indicated that Andre is there just as a spectator. He still knows he's suspended, but he's just come along to throw his support behind Hulk Hogan and the Machines. And he wants to know who the Giant Machine is too. He's always wondered that. And he'd like to meet the Giant Machine, is how the interview goes. But yeah, we've got our main event here. Now in this case, we're going to see, as I said, Hillbilly Jim is probably going to go early. We're going to probably see at some point, I think we're going to see, I think the Giant Machine is going to be eliminated when he chases Heenan from ringside. I don't really want the Giant Machine in the match at all. Like, he's there, but he's never going to get in the ring. He's probably, maybe Big Machine or Super Machine hits a move on Studd or Bundy, and Heenan grabs the referee or jumps on the apron to grab the referee, and Giant sort of steps in the ring. Heenan sees him. Heenan jumps down, and Giant goes out of the ring to start to stalk Heenan. Heenan heads to the back, and the Machine and Giant follows him. That allows you to sort of create the elements of where that Andre Heenan story goes, because you can later justify it that, well, they were already working together, and Giant, didn't want to go, face any of the family, and they worked out a deal where Heenan was going to leave and Giant was going to go with him. Sort of part of that storyline. I think Harley probably gets beaten by maybe Super Machine or Big Machine sort of deal with Harley and Hercules. You then have a situation where probably Studd or Bundy, as we said, one of them is going to get DQ'd, and then we're going to end up on the path where Hogan is probably the last one in there with Orndorff and Bundy. We all know Hogan must pose, as Bruce Pritchard likes to say, and Hogan gets the pin on Bundy, and I think maybe he we get a situation where Hogan and Orndorff are battling on the outside, and either Hogan rolls back in or he runs Orndorff into the ring post so that Jesse can start firing up about how Hogan used the ring post. Hogan cheats. Hogan, needs the outside of the ring stuff to get the win. So Hogan gets the win over Orndorff, but it's a cheap win, and that creates the scenario where you can build to the steel cage match at Saturday night's main event, where they're sort of saying, well, you only got your win because you went outside, but if we meet in the steel cage, you're not going to be able to do that, and Orndorff will beat you. So Hogan stands tall, but Orndorff he loses probably by count out after being rammed into the ring post.
Okay. I like that. Very creative. Taking care of getting the Bobby Andre stuff started, while at the same time finishing off Bundy, and then getting ready for a match I was at live, and that was Hogan and Orndorff. I like that main event. I like that. That was very good, Dave. But my main event, it's total fanboy right here. You're gonna like this. So it's a 5-on-5. The heel team is Paul Orndorff, Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, Adrian Adonis, and Harley Race. Your babyface team. You're gonna laugh. Hulk Hogan, The Machines, Bruno Sammartino, and Pedro Morales. Hogan says he wants to have the greatest of all time on his team. So he is going to have not just one, but two former World Wrestling Federation champions with him to go to war. And I couldn't think of two better guys than Dabron and Pedro. And maybe you do this one at the Garden. I don't know. Maybe you still do Chicago. I don't know.
You'd have to do the Garden if you're going to have Bruno and Pedro.
And Pedro, correct. And then, at one point, Dave, you get Bruno and Harley in the ring alone. The greatest wrestler of the World Wrestling Federation in the 70s versus the greatest wrestler of the NWA of the 70s. Am I totally fanboying it up or not? Or what?
That would be awesome.
Totally fanboyed it up right there.
Both of them should be retired by that point.
Probably, but let me tell you something. They'd still put asses in the seats. I'll tell you that right now, particularly at MSG. Yeah. And
I'm assuming Bruno gets a pin on Harley Race because Vince wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, Bruno gets the pin. This is Vince's world, and Harley's only allowed to live in it. But Bruno, Pedro will get pinned because, he's a solid, but he's not Bruno. Pedro will get pinned by Bundy or Studd. The Machines and maybe the Big Machine gets pinned. And technically, the Giant Machine can get pinned because technically it's not Andre. So maybe Studd pins the Giant Machine and he starts yelling out, I finally beat Andre. I beat Andre. And he takes off the mask and it's another mask. And then they get chased off. And Hogan ends up pinning Bundy. And Bruno pins Orndorff because, that's okay. You could still have a title match with the cage. And the last two survivors in the ring are Hogan and Bruno. Does that make you cry or what? Come on. Come on.
Is Bruno going to pose with him?
Yes. Could you imagine? That would be fantastic. Oh, God. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Now, I don't know what kind of relation. I mean, this was 1986, so I don't know what kind of relationship Bruno and Hogan had. I'm sure at that point it was fine. Bruno really didn't get pissed off until like 89. But I think it would be pretty awesome. I think it would be ridiculously awesome to have Hogan and Bruno stand tall at the end of the show.
Look, it would be, and you just know that if that match was ever to happen again, there's no way. If Bruno, I think you've got the same philosophy. If Bruno was to be appearing, Bruno is not going to be losing. So Bruno and Hogan standing tall there, almost that passing of the torch kind of type of concept. Probably seeing that they do the big handshake in the middle of the ring, maybe even the hug, and Hogan raises Bruno's hand, and then Bruno goes, no, and he lifts Hogan's hand up as sort of like I'm passing the torch to you now. Probably annoyed as hell that he's got to do it, but sort of symbolically handing it over.
Yeah, I think but in the alternate universe, Dave, look, we did an episode here where we did not have Montreal. So I think here we can do it where Bruno's a happy guy. So I'm okay with that. But I think it would be a fun way to end a pay-per-view. I think it would be really great.
It would.
I know, Dave, I do kind of fanboy it a little bit and but that's what makes this show so much fun is we can absolutely pull some stuff out of our butt and have some fun with it. So I think in an alternate universe, a pay-per-view in 1986 that sees Bruno and Hogan ending a show together. Listen, in 4 months in Pontiac, Hogan's validated. So, I think this is a bonus to have Bruno in the Garden raise his hand and go, all right, it was done for me in, 1963. I could do it now, so I like it. I like it. I'm proud of that. I like both my main events tonight. You did a hell of a job with the undercard, Dave. I kind of like my main events though. I think I think we should start a fantasy promotion. That's what I think we should do. Because we both have time for that. But well, there you go. There's our I can't believe, I did not expect this episode to go this long. But that proves how much fun it is to rewrite history and have some fun. So I really did not think this episode would go this long, but I'm glad you listened. Thanks for listening. It was an honor and it was fun to bring it to you. Dave, where can everyone find you?
As always, you can find me lurking around primarily on Facebook. You'll see me popping in and out of the Place to Be Facebook pages and commenting around. Feel free to drop me a line, send me a message. You can private message me through Facebook as well. I still can't bring myself to jump on Twitter yet. It's just something I can't do. But would love to hear from you guys. Would love to hear your thoughts. Are you enjoying some of the ideas that we've come up with? Are there elements like maybe you agree with the card structure, but you'd have someone else go over? I would love to hear from you. Drop us a line, post messages on either the Place to Be Nation pages or send me a message on Facebook. We'd love to be able to just touch base and connect through this journey and really enjoying that. How about you, Scott? How can people reach you?
Well, you can find me, of course, on the Twitter because marketing is what it is. My personal Twitter is at Scott C. Podfather, but more importantly, our brand Twitter is at PTBN Wrestling. And we mentioned this on last month's show, and we're going to mention it again. Next month, our December episode, we're going to do kind of like a looking glass mailbag. We want you to give us your questions and kind of quick hits. What would you do in this match? Or what would you do here? Or how would you change this? Or would you put this in a different city? Or anything you want to come up with that could happen in an alternate universe, shoot it our way. Either private message me on Twitter. You can put it on the PTBN Wrestling Twitter page. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your questions and quickies. Just like, would you change the outcome of this match? What do you think of this? Would you put this pay-per-view in this city? Or, anything like that.
How would you bring a finish to an interpromotional match between Flair and Hogan in 1987?
Right, exactly.
Easy that we can do a little bit of depth, but not spend half an hour on.
Exactly. So quick hits. We want to have a nice, easy flowing, fun show for December to end 2022 before we get into the new year. So that'll be our episode next month. So bring it in, private message me or put it on the Twitter, or even put it on the Place to Be Facebook group page. Anywhere you want to do it, I think we'd have a lot of fun with it. So thanks for listening, everybody. Dave, always a pleasure. You know that. Enjoy your.
No, sorry,
yes,
Scott. I was going to say it is a pleasure for me to be with you, but I want to wish you and I want to wish all our listeners in the Northern Hemisphere, in North America, a happy Thanksgiving. I do hope that you enjoy that time with family and friends. Keep safe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and enjoy your chicken and lamb. For thanks for the world. Thank you, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the football. And we'll have some mailbag fun in December. Here's the looking glass.
Let's do this. Roll the dice, play your cards, break the rules. That's who you are. Whoever said play it safe never played the game. So many players, but too many pawns. Too many judges say what's right or wrong. Let them jump into the fire if they want to play. Oh, 'cause it's a deadly game that we play as we live our lives. When we say what is on our minds, play it now before the game is over. Two simple rules the devil hands us. Make your mistakes, but no second chances. Every time that you stand up, there's another chance to fall. Hey, 'cause it's a deadly game that we play as we live our lives. When we say what is on our minds, play it now before the game is over.
Yeah, baby. Quiet money, once again. AZ. Firm style, back in effect. New regime. Each one teach one, take time to reach some. The young speak dumb, money divides the weak one. Where we from, the cold streets you keep from. If not, it'll be your lungs you bleed from. Repeat none, most addicts you leave sprung. Lost into eternal sleep comes. All in black, hell and back. No burns, no concerns. Straight away, no turns.
Judgment Day calls